What you are about to see is probably going to irritate a lot of people, especially those who spent thousands more just to park a different badge in their driveway. Because in 2026, one trend has quietly taken over the automotive world: clone cars. And once you notice it, you start realizing just how much manufacturers have been hiding in plain sight. Right now, there are countless vehicles driving around that are almost identical beneath the surface. Same architecture, same engines, identical mechanical components, and in some cases even the exact same interior layout. Yet somehow, one version ends up costing several thousand euros more than the other. And the craziest part? Most of that price gap comes down to nothing more than the logo sitting on the front grille. We are exposing some of the boldest examples of these automotive twins. Cars that share nearly everything mechanically, but are marketed at completely different price points simply to create the illusion of exclusivity. And trust me, a few of these comparisons are so outrageous that you immediately understand why so many buyers feel like the industry has been draining their wallets for years. So stay with me until the end, because the last comparison might be the wildest one of all. One model is sold for dramatically more money than its twin, even though under the bodywork they are almost the exact same vehicle. Case number 6. And this is where things start getting seriously eye-opening, because a huge number of drivers still believe these two SUVs were built from completely different worlds. But once you dig deeper, you realize they are connected far more closely than most people ever imagined. We are talking about the Nissan Rogue and the Mitsubishi Outlander. At first glance, they seem like totally separate products. Different styling, different cabin layouts, and even completely different branding strategies aimed at different types of buyers. But the moment you start looking underneath the sheet metal, the similarities become impossible to ignore. In reality, the gap between them is far smaller than the manufacturers would like consumers to believe. The reason comes down to the massive Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance, one of the biggest automotive partnerships on the planet. Inside that alliance, platforms, drivetrains, and engineering systems are constantly shared in order to slash development costs. And because of that strategy, the Rogue and the Outlander ended up borrowing heavily from the same technical foundation. Several Outlander versions, for example, rely on Nissan's well-known 2.5-liter engine paired with Nissan's CVT transmission technology. So a major portion of the vehicle is essentially built around the same mechanical package found inside the Rogue. But things get even more interesting once you realize the partnership went both ways. At one point, Nissan found itself lacking a competitive plug-in hybrid for this segment. Mitsubishi, meanwhile, already had a working system ready to go. Instead of spending years developing something from scratch, Nissan chose to use Mitsubishi's existing hybrid technology. Which means that in several global markets, the plug-in hybrid version of the Rogue is, underneath it all, incredibly close to a Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid wearing Nissan badges. What makes this even more surprising is that Nissan did not use its heavily promoted e-Power setup here, despite advertising that system aggressively in other regions. Instead, the company leaned on Mitsubishi's hybrid engineering to speed up production and avoid enormous research costs, and the parts sharing does not stop there. Certain versions of both SUVs also make use of the same 1.5-liter turbocharged engine combined with mild hybrid assistance. Another perfect example of how aggressively automakers recycle technology within these giant corporate alliances. The most obvious difference between the two mainly comes down to cabin configuration. The Outlander offers a third row and can seat up to 7 passengers, while the Rogue stays focused on the more traditional 5-seat SUV layout. But when it comes to platform design, chassis engineering, and many of the major components underneath, the family connection is extremely clear. Then comes the pricing, and this is where buyers really start asking questions. In many European markets, the Nissan Rogue starts at roughly 32,000 euros after conversion, while the Mitsubishi Outlander can quickly climb toward 36,000 euros depending on the trim level. That is a difference of several thousand euros, even though both SUVs share a massive portion of their engineering DNA. Now, that does not automatically make one vehicle better than the other. What it really reveals is how the modern automotive business operates behind the scenes. Development costs are spread across multiple brands, technologies are reused wherever possible, and then each company repackages the final product with different styling, different marketing, and of course, a completely different price tag. Case number 5. And if you thought the earlier examples were already shocking, this one takes things to an entirely different level. Because now we are talking about one of the most iconic American automotive brands ever created. Most people automatically assume the Ford Territory is a traditional Ford SUV developed with classic American engineering, the kind of vehicle built from the same philosophy behind the company's legendary trucks and SUVs from places like Michigan and Kentucky. But the real story behind this vehicle is far more unexpected. The territory did not actually begin its life in the United States at all. Its roots trace directly back to China. More specifically, the SUV is heavily based on the JMC Yusheng S330, a model created by the Chinese manufacturer Jiangling Motors, a company that has worked closely with Ford for years. And that is usually the moment where many buyers suddenly stop and rethink everything. This is not simply a case of using a few outsourced components from overseas, something almost every modern manufacturer does today. The entire foundation of the vehicle comes from the original Chinese model. The platform, the structural architecture, the engineering concept, and a huge portion of the development process were already established before Ford stepped in. Afterward, Ford redesigned the exterior styling, reshaped the front end, and added the brand's familiar visual identity before launching the SUV under its own badge. Under the hood sits a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine producing roughly 143 horsepower. That powertrain also originated from JMC's engineering program. Ford did make adjustments to the suspension tuning and transmission calibration to give the SUV a driving feel closer to what customers expect from the brand, but the technical backbone remained deeply connected to the Chinese source vehicle. When the first units started appearing in Latin American markets, the discovery sparked massive discussions online. Owners on automotive forums began pointing out that certain parts inside the engine bay still carried JMC markings and manufacturing references. Even the infotainment system on some early versions reportedly displayed graphics and menu layouts that looked remarkably similar to the original Chinese model, that quickly turned the territory into a major talking point. Ford describes the SUV as a collaborative project developed through its partnership with JMC, and technically that statement is accurate. But even so, the vehicle remains extremely close to its Chinese counterpart in terms of overall engineering and construction. Now, one thing needs to be made very clear. A Chinese-developed vehicle no longer automatically means poor quality. China's automotive industry has advanced at an incredible pace over the last several years, especially in technology, manufacturing precision, and modern vehicle design. The real issue here is not necessarily quality, it is perception. Many buyers genuinely believe they are purchasing a fully American-developed SUV shaped by Ford's decades of experience building durable trucks and utility vehicles. In reality, they are often buying a product that was largely engineered in China and later adapted by Ford for international markets, and this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. In China, the original JMC version is positioned as a relatively affordable SUV. But once Ford places its badge on the territory and distributes it globally, the pricing suddenly moves into territory where it competes directly against brands like Mazda and Toyota. It is an incredibly smart business strategy. Use Ford's global dealer network, brand recognition, and customer trust to reposition the vehicle much higher in the market, and that is exactly why this example fits perfectly into this video. A huge number of buyers only learn about the territory's real origins long after they have already signed the paperwork at the dealership. So the real question is not whether the SUV is good or bad. The real question is whether customers truly understand what they are actually buying. Case number 4. And this is where the story becomes seriously surprising, because even a lot of hardcore car enthusiasts have no idea this pairing exists. We are talking about none other than the Toyota Corolla, one of the best-selling vehicles on Earth. But hidden behind that famous name is a nearly identical sibling that most people completely overlook, the Suzuki Sways. What makes this case even crazier is how far the similarities actually go. This is not just another example of two companies sharing a platform or borrowing a few mechanical parts. These two cars are literally built in the same factory. Both the Corolla and the Sways roll off Toyota's production line in the United Kingdom as part of the partnership between Toyota and Suzuki, and because of that cooperation, the overlap between the two vehicles is massive. They share the same body structure, the same assembly process, identical safety technology, and cabins that use many of the exact same components. From an engineering standpoint, the differences are surprisingly minor. If you look closely, you will notice a few subtle styling tweaks at the front. The bumpers have been slightly reshaped, the grille design is a little different, and of course the badges have changed so Suzuki can maintain its own brand identity. But underneath the exterior panels, you are essentially looking at the same car. The story continues under the hood as well. Toyota offers the Corolla with two hybrid setups, a 1.8-liter hybrid and a more powerful 2-liter version. Suzuki, however, kept things much simpler and decided to sell the Sways exclusively with the 1.8-liter hybrid system. That powertrain produces around 140 horsepower and uses Toyota's 5th-generation hybrid technology, widely considered one of the most proven and efficient hybrid systems in the automotive world today. In other words, when someone buys a Suzuki Sways, they are basically getting full Toyota hybrid engineering wrapped in a different badge, and naturally, this leads to the question that matters most for buyers: the price. A Toyota Corolla hybrid can quickly climb to around €29,000 depending on the trim level. Meanwhile, the Suzuki Sways often starts closer to €27,000 despite offering extremely similar equipment and technology, but the real point goes beyond saving a few €1,000s. What buyers are often paying for is reputation. The Corolla name has built decades of trust thanks to reliability, resale value, and millions of satisfied owners around the globe. That reputation alone dramatically increases the perceived value of the car. Suzuki, on the other hand, takes a completely different approach. Fewer versions, less advertising, less prestige, but mechanically, the vehicle is almost identical. Which means many buyers end up spending significantly more money even though the actual driving experience and engineering underneath are incredibly close. If you strip away the branding and look at the facts objectively, the Sways is essentially a Corolla wearing a Suzuki logo. Same hybrid technology, same core engineering, and nearly the same experience behind the wheel. For buyers focused purely on value for money, this might actually be one of the smartest hidden deals on the market today. And somehow, this still is not even the wildest example coming up next. Case number 3. And this example might be the clearest demonstration yet of how cleverly massive car companies position their brands. Because here, the same corporation is essentially selling two nearly identical SUVs, but charging different prices and targeting completely different types of customers. We are talking about the Chevrolet Equinox and the GMC Terrain. Both vehicles were developed under the same General Motors program and share an enormous amount of hardware. The platform, suspension setup, electronics, and even the familiar 1.5-liter turbocharged engine producing around 175 horsepower are almost exactly the same. From a technical perspective, these SUVs are incredibly close relatives. But General Motors uses a very calculated branding strategy here. Chevrolet is designed to be the affordable mass-market option, practical, family-oriented, and focused on volume sales. GMC, meanwhile, is positioned as more upscale, tougher-looking, and more premium. And that is where the real marketing game begins. To make the Terrain appear more luxurious and expensive, GMC gave it a far more aggressive design language. The grille is larger, the body lines are sharper, and the C-shaped headlights borrow styling cues from bigger GMC vehicles like the Sierra pickup. The result is a vehicle that immediately feels more rugged and premium at first glance, but the moment you start digging deeper, the illusion becomes easier to spot. Underneath the styling changes, the engineering remains remarkably similar. If someone drives an Equinox and then immediately switches into a Terrain, they will quickly notice how closely both SUVs behave on the road. The acceleration, engine response, and overall driving dynamics feel almost identical because the mechanical foundation underneath is basically shared. Inside the cabin, General Motors tries harder to justify the higher price of the Terrain. Depending on the trim level, the GMC receives softer materials, improved sound insulation, and extra styling touches intended to create a more upscale atmosphere, especially in the well-known Denali version. The Equinox, on the other hand, follows a much more straightforward philosophy. The interior focuses heavily on practicality, comfort, and family usability without chasing the same premium image. What becomes really interesting, though, is how many important measurements remain virtually unchanged between the two. Cabin space, wheelbase, and cargo capacity are all extremely close. In everyday driving and daily usability, both SUVs deliver almost the exact same level of functionality, and that is exactly why the pricing comparison becomes so fascinating. Depending on the market and trim level, the GMC Terrain can cost roughly €3,000 more than the Chevrolet Equinox. Yet both vehicles use the same engine, the same chassis architecture, and even the same production infrastructure inside General Motors. When you look at both SUVs objectively, the intended buyers become very obvious. The Equinox is aimed at people who want maximum value for their money, practical, rational, and free from unnecessary luxury markups. The Terrain, meanwhile, is built for customers who care more about image, styling, and exclusivity, and who are willing to spend extra money for that perception even though the engineering underneath remains almost the same. Case number 2. And this is the moment where you really need to pay attention, because this example alone could save some buyers a serious amount of money. Why? Because here, you are essentially getting Toyota engineering without paying the full Toyota premium attached to the badge. We are talking about the Suzuki Grand Vitara and the Toyota Urban Cruiser. Most people see these SUVs as direct rivals competing against each other, when in reality they were born from the exact same development partnership. Both vehicles came out of the global collaboration between Toyota and Suzuki, and they share far more than most drivers realize. Things become even more revealing once you look at where the vehicles are actually built. Both the Grand Vitara and the Urban Cruiser are assembled in the same factory at Toyota Kirloskar Motor in India. That means they come from the same production line, use the same structural foundation, share identical core components, and rely on nearly the same engineering underneath. The differences on the outside are mostly there to create visual separation between the brands. Suzuki gave the Grand Vitara a larger honeycomb-style grille and aggressive daytime running lights with a distinctive triple light signature, making the SUV appear sportier and more rugged. Toyota took a slightly more refined approach with the Urban Cruiser. A chrome strip connects the headlights across the front, and the rear lighting follows Toyota's current global design language more closely. But once you move past the styling, the differences almost completely disappear. Both SUVs use the exact same engines and hybrid systems. And the most interesting version is the strong hybrid model, because that technology was fully developed by Toyota. It combines a gasoline engine with an efficient electric system designed to deliver excellent fuel economy and an incredibly smooth driving experience, especially in urban traffic. The family connection becomes even more obvious once you step inside. Sit in the Suzuki first and then climb into the Toyota, and the similarities immediately jump out. The dashboard layout is nearly identical, the 9-inch central display sits in the exact same position, and even the climate controls look almost unchanged. Even the steering wheel design is extremely close between the two. Realistically, the biggest difference most people will notice is the logo sitting in the center. And that alone shows just how deep this partnership really goes, and of course, for most buyers the biggest question always comes down to price. In many markets, the Suzuki Grand Vitara costs noticeably less than the Toyota Urban Cruiser. Despite both vehicles being mechanically almost identical, Toyota can charge that premium because the company has spent decades building one of the strongest reputations in the automotive industry for reliability, durability, and resale value. That trust allows Toyota to command higher prices almost automatically. Suzuki, meanwhile, positions the same engineering package at a lower price point. And that is exactly why this might be one of the smartest examples in the entire video. Because when someone chooses the Suzuki, they are essentially getting a Toyota underneath, the same hybrid technology, the same mechanical DNA, and almost the same driving experience, while spending less money up front. And trust me, the next example pushes this concept even further. Because the final case may be one of the most extreme examples of automotive twins the modern car industry has ever created. Case number 1. And this might be the example causing the biggest controversy of them all right now. In several countries, Chevrolet is selling an SUV that looks modern, stylish, and premium enough to instantly grab attention inside a showroom. But behind that polished exterior is a story most buyers have absolutely no idea about. We are talking about the Chevrolet Captiva. And here comes the part that catches many people completely off guard. This SUV was never originally created as a Chevrolet product. Its true origins actually begin in China. The Captiva's hidden twin is called the Baojun 530. These two vehicles share almost everything beneath the surface. The platform, structural design, major interior components, and the entire engineering foundation all come from the same development project. The biggest differences are mostly limited to the badges, redesigned front and rear styling, and a few cosmetic adjustments to make the SUV blend into Chevrolet's global design language. The project itself was created through the industrial partnership between SAIC Motor, General Motors, and Wuling. Together, these companies manufacture vehicles for markets all around the world. Which means that many Captiva buyers are unknowingly purchasing a vehicle that originally started life as the Baojun 530 for the Asian market before later being repositioned under the Chevrolet brand. And one thing needs to be clarified immediately. A vehicle developed in China no longer automatically means low quality. Companies like BYD, Geely, and Chang'an Automobile have made enormous advances in technology, design, and manufacturing over the last several years, dramatically reshaping the global auto industry in the process. So the real debate is not necessarily about where the vehicle comes from. The bigger issue is customer perception. Many buyers walk into a dealership believing they are purchasing a fully Chevrolet-developed SUV built around decades of American engineering heritage. In reality, the technical foundation comes from a global alliance with very strong Chinese roots. Under the hood sits a 1.5-liter turbocharged gasoline engine producing roughly 147 horsepower. The engine is clearly tuned for low fuel consumption and smooth urban driving. At the same time, owner forums in multiple countries have repeatedly discussed concerns involving certain electronic components, transmission behavior under specific conditions, and the long-term durability of some interior and mechanical parts. That does not mean every vehicle develops problems, of course. But those reports alone have been enough to trigger major discussions among buyers and automotive analysts alike, and honestly, this is where the entire point of the video really comes together. The moment a familiar badge appears on the hood, many people automatically assume the entire vehicle was engineered directly by that manufacturer. But the modern automotive world no longer works that way. Platforms are shared globally, technologies are co-developed, and vehicles are constantly built through international partnerships. In this case, Chevrolet took an existing SUV, redesigned a few styling elements, and integrated it into its worldwide lineup. And that is exactly why researching a vehicle carefully before buying it matters more today than ever before. Because many times, customers are not only paying for the vehicle itself, they are also paying for the logo attached to the grille, and with that, you have now seen some of the most fascinating examples of modern automotive twins. Vehicles that share platforms, engineering, and sometimes nearly complete development programs, yet end up being marketed and priced completely differently depending on the badge sitting on the front. So the next time you start shopping for a car, take a closer look before signing anything. Because sometimes the smartest purchase is not the most expensive model on the lot, but the one that delivers the best balance of engineering, reliability, and overall value for the money. And trust me, this rabbit hole goes much deeper. I already have another video ready for you, this time exposing pickup trucks that also have secret twins most people never even realize exist. Click on it now and check it out.